just 3 or 4 years ago, when I was overseeing a large commercial contracting team, we had such a long, arduous process for people like lawyers to look at agreements they had just negotiated and summarize every key term and trying to put it in a digestible format so CFO's team, other business leaders could understand, hey, what did we just agree to? There's no need for people to do that anymore. Find the right AI solution that works for your organization with your security and your risk profile in mind and everything like that, and make sure that you're using it properly, that the legal team is trained on how to use it to get the risks documented and over to the right people, that finance team and others are actually going to use it, because that does the heavy lifting. And then it's just a matter of what's your own internal process to track, like, okay, these are my key obligations, so this is what I'm going to check for periodically. This is what I'm going to have this team audit periodically.
If you ask most CFOs where their biggest blind spots hide, they'll point to data, forecasting, or maybe talent. But rarely do they mention contracts, the very foundation of their company's revenue. In this episode, we explore why that's changing. The rise of AI, SaaS pricing shifts, and new definitions of users are turning legal fine print into strategic battlegrounds. My guest today sits at the intersection of law and business, where every clause can shape enterprise value. Stay tuned, because the conversation may just change how you think about contract risk as a lever for growth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Suite Voices, a collaboration between the Suite and CFO Thought Leader, where we explore the intersections between finance and the broader executive suite. Joining us today is Shaun Sethna, General Counsel and General Manager of the L Suite, the community that connects and empowers today's leading in-house legal executives. Shaun's career spans nearly 2 decades across both corporate and technology sectors, from his early days in private practice at King & Spalding to senior legal roles at Schlumberger and more than a decade at Altisource, where he led major M&A negotiations, SEC compliance, and SaaS transactions. At the Suite, Shaun now plays a dual role, guiding the legal strategy while shaping the growth of a community designed for modern GCs and legal innovators. In this conversation, we're diving into contract risk and compliance, how CFOs and GCs can partner to mitigate exposure in complex agreements. Shaun, welcome.
Jack, good to be here. Thanks for having me. And I have to say, like, it's been a while since this has happened, but hearing 2 decades worth of work collapsed into 30 seconds makes me feel like I've been pretty productive. So I appreciate your summarizing that.
Yeah, it was a little challenging to read all that, but I appreciate your patience. But hey, let's get right to it here. From your perspective, as both a general counsel and a business leader, what are the most common contract risks CFOs underestimate or frequently overlook?
I love the question. Look, every CFO is different, just like every GC is different. We all have different things that we focus on, things that we don't. And, over I would say in the 15 years I've been in more senior in-house roles, I've actually only worked with 2 CFOs, because I was the 10 years I was at Altisource, we had 1 CFO that whole time. We had 1 CFO here. And they've been great. And
Yeah.
So with all those caveats out of the way, so hopefully I don't offend anyone who might be listening.
You're fine.
Look, the biggest ones to me are where you might seem like you're being picky, but they have potential to have really big consequences, sometimes years down the road.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that, and again, I don't think this is specific to CFOs. I think these are things that all execs, including GCs, but certainly non-GCs would often overlook in contracts. So I guess the first one that comes to mind is what I would call, easy to terminate contracts that are not terminable for convenience. And by the way, this is something that GCs underestimate. I myself, despite my mentioning it here and having talked about it before, I underestimate it sometimes. So I think it's a good one to talk about. When you're in a commercial negotiation, one of the biggest issues often is this contract going to be for a fixed term, for a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract, with a minimum spend where you're really locking in that revenue, or is it terminable for convenience, or no real commitment there? That maybe it's a month-to-month contract, or maybe it's a year-long contract, but there's no minimal spend. And so basically knowing what you're dealing with there is one of the threshold issues that you really need to think about, because it sets the tone for the rest of the negotiation. Because companies are generally willing to take on lower pricing, more risk, more indemnity obligations or other obligations if they know, well, hey, let's do it because we're locking in millions of dollars of revenue over the next few years, for example. And that makes sense, by the way. I haven't gotten to the part where people are overlooking it. I think where it gets overlooked is even in a locked-in term. Like it says, like, locked in for 3 years, can't terminate for convenience, minimum spend. A lot of people tend to relax at that point and think, okay, we got what we wanted, now let's be flexible. But there are always, in any contract, even one that's locked in, there are other grounds to terminate, not just because you feel like it, but because something bad happened. And those grounds can range from something like committed multiple and massive violations of law, or they're declaring bankruptcy or something like that. Totally reasonable. Like people would expect that. Down towards things like, oh, you breached the contract one time in, not necessarily a material way. And there's no what's called a notice and cure period. There's no opportunity for one side to say, hey, you breached this, can you fix it? No, it's just one breach and you're done. Or anything that might harm the reputation, or anything that just seems very loose and vague, that at any time one party could say, this is we're done, we're terminating this. People don't spend enough time thinking about that. And so this issue I've seen come up multiple times, both when I've been negotiating an agreement that's kind of happening live, and when I've been doing M&A due diligence, looking at a target that we're potentially buying. It all seems like, oh, this is great, this is locked in, like this is going to be smooth sailing, and then you kick the tires a little bit and you say, well, first of all, just by the nature of the transaction, they might terminate. And even if there's not express grounds to doing that, you can kind of see, hey, it is pretty easy for them to get out of this contract, so it's not quite locked in. So we really need to make sure we have a good relationship that is transitioned over. And that I see get overlooked all the time.
Where do you see the strongest opportunities then for CFOs and GCs to collaborate when it comes to mitigating contract risk? Where are the obvious areas?
So the obvious areas, first thing, make sure you're in lockstep. And this is a whole executive leadership team issue, not just CFO and GC. What are the key goals of the company? What are we optimizing for? Is it preparing for an IPO or exit? Is it pure growth? Is it something else? Is it expanding markets? You have to know what the strategy is, because depending on what it is, would suggest different steps and different kinds of training and different kinds of issues to align on. So that's definitely the first step. Hopefully that's table stakes for everybody who's listening to this. I would say the next thing that they should be doing, which candidly I have not often done a great job of. So I need to be taking my own advice here. Next thing they should be doing is giving some basic training to the others function. So like a mini finance for lawyers class, a mini legal for CFOs class kind of thing, where each side kind of understands the basics. And I'm not saying that lets you skip a review or anything like that, but that helps us each highlight the issues that we know the other will care about. And that's where a lot of things get missed. If you don't know that, then the person reviewing the contract might not think, hey, I should have somebody from the finance org take a look at this clause. And that's where the risks get missed.
Do you know if, are there like frameworks or certain tools finance leaders can adopt to ensure greater visibility into those contractual obligations?
So I would say, my top 4 answers here would be AI, 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 AI. I really can't say this enough. But just 3 or 4 years ago, when I was overseeing a large commercial contracting team, we had such a long, arduous process for people like lawyers to look at agreements they had just negotiated and summarize every key term and trying to put it in a digestible format so CFO's team, other business leaders could understand, hey, what did we just agree to? There's no need for people to do that anymore. Find the right AI solution that works for your organization with your security and your risk profile in mind and everything like that, and make sure that you're using it properly, that the legal team is trained on how to use it to get the risks documented and over to the right people, that finance team and others are actually going to use it, because that does the heavy lifting. And then it's just a matter of what's your own internal process to track, like, okay, these are my key obligations, so this is what I'm going to check for periodically. This is what I'm going to have this team audit periodically.
Contracts often need to balance commercial speed with legal protections. How can CFOs and GCs work together more frequently to strike that balance without slowing the business down?
Another great question. That's probably the biggest challenge that certainly GCs are dealing with, and I imagine CFOs as well. In addition to kind of what I talked about before on aligning on goals and giving that cross-departmental training, the other thing that needs to be done that some execs just aren't great at yet is really empowering the teams under them to make decisions, to know when to escalate, because every decision can't come to the GC and the CFO. Like, everything would come to a grinding halt. And so really investing that time in training people and empowering them to make those kinds of decisions is really critical here.
Wow. Looking ahead, what new or evolving areas of contract risk, for example, in AI, cybersecurity, or ESG commitments perhaps, should CFOs be prepared to navigate with their teams?
So one really, really interesting topic that a couple members of our community raised, so I can't take credit for thinking of this on my own, is with SaaS contracts, what is it going to mean now, but certainly a year from now and 2 years from now, to be a user? Right now, we think that most of these are based on how many users do you have per month. When people start using AI agents more, and so the AI agent is now a user, what does that mean? Do we have to completely rethink from both a finance and a legal perspective what it means to be a user and how we price these contracts, and create a different tier? Like, if you want an AI agent to use it, then this is the price. If you want a human to use it, you have, like, this is the price. And what safeguards do you have in that? I think that is the big issue these days.
Is that a conversation underway? I mean, is that what
it's already underway?
Yeah,
it's already underway. People are already planning for it, and I think that's going to be really, really exciting to see where things go over the next year or so.
Could you expand on that a little bit for us? I mean, what are the sensitivities there for the CFOs? What are CFOs? What would they prefer? to see happen there as far as pricing? And
well, you probably want to ask some CFOs instead of asking the GC that.
Yeah.
But what I would think is right away, meaning today,
Yeah.
CFOs need to be talking to their GCs to at least understand, well, how is this currently set up today?
Yeah.
Is this already set up today such that a company could have an AI agent acting as a user, paying the existing user fees, and basically kind of doing the work, replacing the work of 5, 10, 20, 100 human seats that are being used today, in which case, look, that's a massive math problem right there.
Yeah.
That you could, in theory, if the contract would permit it, and that's where the law heads, that just, revenue could get slashed. And so you need to be prepared for that now and start understanding. In terms of what the structure should be, maybe, look, I don't know. Maybe this heads towards instead of a per user model at all, it goes to how much data are you getting? How much use is there? And so you end up charging people who just use it like 30 minutes a day, versus somebody who uses it 24 hours a day. Well, that's an exaggeration. Let's say 6 hours a day. Today, most SaaS contracts, they're paying the same rate. Maybe that shouldn't be. Maybe it should be based on the data being used, or the system time, or the system resources, or whatever it is, a different metric. Or maybe it's just a different class of users. An AI agent pays one price, a human user pays another price, and asking your GC and your IT teams, do you have mechanisms to track like who actually is the user? I don't know. In my head, right now, it probably seems the latter is the easier way to go. Maybe the less the lower friction method, but that doesn't mean it's the best one. And I think they're going to be a lot of conversations at a lot of different companies had by a lot of people who are much smarter than I am trying to figure this out.
I just wanted to, for a moment here, segue back to so many of the finance leaders we speak to when they first, and it's a certain weight class of company, mid-sized firms, I suppose, where they step in as the very first CFO. Roughly around that same time, roughly around that same revenue threshold, the general counsel. It's not uncommon to see a company also. First, I think in my experience, it's first the CFO, then the general counsel, in my observation. But can you tell us something? Is there a weight class of company today where general counsels find the door swings open when they look to take their legal function to the next level? Is it similar between the two? I'm making the comparison.
When you say swing open, you mean in times of kind of growing the function,
Yep.
or when there is a need for a general counsel in the first place?
Where they determine now it's time for us to have an in-house counsel. We need to.
So first of all, you're absolutely right that the vast majority of the time, CFO comes first. No question about that. Our company was a little bit different, thankfully. Helped me get a job, but remember, our company has, because I'm the general manager as well, have a legal community that's larger, and so it made sense there. But vast majority of the time, absolutely right, and that does make sense. I would say, ballpark, I would say maybe 20 to 30% larger, further along. So it's not quite a doubling, maybe at most 50% larger, 50% farther along. Nowhere near a doubling for it to make sense to get from a CFO to a GC, but it is a little bit later.
Is it executive recruiters that CFOs will deploy, or the C-suite and board members deploy to find the legal talent? How often, who's involved often enough in the placement of legal talent?
I think that's a great question. I think if we're talking about the first GC hire. So a
Yeah.
company of that scale, it's a very different answer from if you're talking about an established legal department, and they're looking for a new general counsel. That,
Right. Yeah.
it's a very different answer. If you're talking about the first one, I mean, look, if it's usually a relatively small company, they're generally not hiring, the big, famous retained search, general counsel, executive searcher. That's usually not happening. I've seen, a mix of just going at it purely internally and looking for referrals and everything like that, which can be quite fruitful, to engaging maybe the kind of contingent recruiters. But since you gave me that segue, I think one thing that we have been doing in our community, which has helped greatly, it's been good for us, it's been good for the community, it's been good for candidates, is because we have so many executive members. And obviously a GC will know when their company is looking for a CFO. A CFO will know when their company is looking for a GC. We've been able to help, in our community function. We've been able to help our executives find other executives in their company by looking at our membership and other people who would be potential, qualified members. We have a formal jobs program now, and that model seems to be working, pretty well for our members, and they really appreciate that, having it as a benefit.
And I guess the characterization that of company that I'm looking at, or classification, really growth companies, thinking of growth companies that are preparing to scale, where, suddenly they're like, we need in-house counsel now.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, even taking when I joined, I was not just general counsel. I came in as general counsel. I was also overseeing HR as head of people and overseeing, the content program for the company for all the reasons you just said. And I see the same thing, both in people I know and just profiles I happen to see if I'm connected to them on LinkedIn or what have you, that, at earlier to growth stage companies, that is very common. I often see somebody so-and-so, joining a new role as GC and head of people, or GC and COO, or GC and some other function. It's very common. Now, I'm sure that that's also common for CFO. So I think it's definitely, similarities between the two functions.
Well, thank you. Thank you for spotlighting that for us. I'll go back to the collaboration that we've been discussing, and I'm wondering if you can share an example of when strong general counsel CFO collaboration helped to avoid, or maybe it's resolve, a major contract related issue. And with the idea of what, we want to know what other leaders the takeaway might be for them. What would you share with us?
Yeah, so, I'll skip to the takeaway, and the takeaway is back to what I said before. Train each other's groups, so like what the key issues are. Take that time. But let me give you the example. My favorite examples are both, I think these happened at two separate times, but I was working very closely with our CFO, on multiple kind of acquisitions we were doing over time. And in each case, like I caught what is typically a kind of finance issue, that she happened to miss, and she had caught a legal issue that I had happened to miss. And the fact that happened and there was no ego, none of that. I loved that we had that kind of, collaboration, and I hope that all GC CFO partnerships are like that. But that only was able to happen because we each took the time to educate each other. Like I think my issue, that I caught was on, how, paid time off was being accrued and why that was important, and a purely financial issue. We were talking about having to make payouts upon the acquisition. And she took the time to explain that to me. I mean, it was like 3 minutes, but she took the time to do that. And the issue that I missed was something to do with, that we might have to assign a lease or something like that, that would have major tax consequences if we didn't have it do it properly. And I had missed that there was one that needed consent based on how it was worded, but she only caught that because I had talked to her about this is the language that matters, this is the language that's okay. Um, and because we each took the time to do that, we were each able to step in and catch something. I'm not going to sit here and saying, oh, we were each falling down on our jobs and we needed the other person to save us. No, that's the nature of things.
Yeah.
You're moving fast. You have a million things to do. You are going to miss things.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you take the 3 minutes to explain why something is important to your colleague who you trust and just doesn't have the same expertise that you do? So more of that is what I say. That is the takeaway. Like, really take that time to explain your function to your peers outside of your function so that they can help you and you can help them.
We've been speaking with Shaun Sethna, General Counsel and General Manager of the L Suite. Shaun, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you. It was great being here. Had a lovely time.